Well, thanks, Mark. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Only Connect podcast. And here we are in this amazing place in central Northumberland called Brinkburn, where your business is currently based. And we're going to talk a little bit today about your business entrepreneurship journey, your career, and how, to a certain extent, connections played a role within that. And yes, so thank you very much. I don't know if you want to just take a moment to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Brinkburn and what you do here.
Yeah, so my name's Mark Fenwick. I am based at Brinkburn, which is just down from Rothbury or Cragside. People probably know Cragside, they may well know Brinkburn Priory. But Brinkburn Priory is part of the estate. And I came back here in 2007. I actually arrived in 1967 and then so grew up in Northumberland, but a sort of a classic boomerang, went away to study, spent 20 years in London, came back in 2007. And we have accommodation, we have a wellness base, we have a business and wellness base, and we've probably been most known for weddings over the last 10, 15 years.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So if we just take a step back and go back to those sort of early starting years of your career, you studied drama at university, and that led you on to decide when you moved to London or based in London to start things off, that sort of graduate entrepreneurship, developing sort of high-end interiors within homes and so forth. Would you like to share a little bit about that and that work that you...
Yeah, so I graduated in 1986. I trained as a drama teacher. The education system went on strike in 1986. Margaret Thatcher was really beginning to get going in 1986. And when I left university, I could not see a way that I wanted to go back into school. I went from school to university and I was sort of being proposed to go back into school. And there was something called the Enterprise Allowance Scheme. The Enterprise Allowance Scheme enabled you, gave you a small amount of money to support you for 12 months to start a business. So my girlfriend at the time and I decided that we were going to do that, and we set up a small interior decoration and design business based in Brighton. I think the exciting thing at the time was there was a deregulation in the mortgage market and there were a lot of people ploughing money into property, and we were able to jump on the back of that and help people to design beautiful houses. And after a few years, so it must be about 1992, moved to London, started working with a joinery company, and that opened up a market of very high-end residential properties, predominantly in Chelsea and Belgravia. And I moved it and set up a showroom, and then started working abroad in America. I met some American bond brokers who were living in Belgravia. When they transferred back to America, they then asked, would you come over and help them in America? So suddenly I was on as a bit of a track. And that was sort of the first business that I started.
Fantastic. And then you make the decision to boomerang back up.
Yeah, I came back to...
Yeah.
I was married then. I had two young kids, and my wife Emma, who's a Londoner, it's very difficult to get a Londoner out of London, would come to Northumberland, and she saw me and she just saw how happy I was up here, and she said, you know, you're really happy in Northumberland, why don't we move? And my dad had given us a tumble down pile of stones that used to be a barn it was in a shocking state. There were trees growing through the roof and it was collapsing. And I thought, with my experience and her background, which was property development, that we could sell our property in London, come to the Northeast, build a property, live with mortgage free, happy ever after. How wrong were we? So that I ended up with a larger mortgage up here than I had in London, but it was a great experience. I still got that property, so I'm pleased with that.
Fantastic. And that was a hard task, should we say, but a rewarding one at the end. And putting those sort of creative and property development skills to good use. So you moved back to the Northeast, and for those people of a certain age, they'll be very familiar in our business community with One Northeast.
Yes.
And you became a fund manager.
Yeah. So I very quickly, I thought it was going to take a bit of time to find another job, but there was a design and creative fund that was set up, and within about a couple of months, I was then running that, and we had a couple of £1 million a year that we were looking for investments that were Northeast based, and I ran that. That was the next thing that I did.
Fantastic. And I appreciate it will have been distinctly different, but the work you did with Nesta, investing in those ideas and those sort of entrepreneurial ideas for the arts and creativity aspect, was there a comparative theme with One Northeast work as well? So
there were a couple of things that I was trying to do, and that I was allowed to do. So I was allowed to support and invest in one-off projects. So businesses that came with a defined project, and in particular, I really was interested in film and the moment you've gone from script to first day of production. So that gap funding in between, how do you finance that bit? I was able to loan companies money, which are on a convertible loan. And I was also then able to invest directly into companies on an equity basis. So those were the three things that I was looking at. But I wasn't focused on young entrepreneurs. I could focus age-wise on anybody. But again, particularly in that digital creative
fantastic
space.
You mentioned the sort of conclusion of One Northeast, and that aligned with a time in your personal life where not long after that there was a bit of a health scare.
Yeah. So the reason One Northeast changed was there was change in government, and George Osborne came in and just went, we're not having regional development agencies. And it was quite, it was very binary. One day they were there, and the next day it's not going to be happening. So there was an awful lot of change going on. And that was the start for me of understanding that I had cancer. And it took, it took me 6 years. I kept collapsing in really weird moments. It just so happened that it was when I was in town, going out, and I thought I knew there was something wrong with me, but nobody could put their finger on what it was. But in 2016, when I collapsed the third time, I just basically went to A&E and I said, I'm not going home until you found out what's wrong with me. And the next day, I had an emergency endoscopy, and they found that I had a tumour on my duodenum. So that was quite a moment.
Yes. And how did that influence your perspective on, big question, but how did it influence your perspective on like life in general, and how you thought about potentially, the health aspects, but also how that might influence what you do thereafter.
So, well, you learn an awful lot about the NHS, so that's very interesting. I learnt also to be very circumspect about how I talked about it. So one of the guys who's actually who came to work today for me today, he takes up and down our canvas teepees. He asked me how I was, and I said, "Oh, I've got a cancer," and I could see his face he just could not believe that I said that. So I learned very quickly not to say that. So there was a whole process of just sort of understanding that whilst you may know what you're talking about and what you're feeling, everybody else around you, you've got to just be very careful about how you approach other people. And your family probably suffer much more than you do throughout the process, because their doubt is much greater than your doubt. That's how I felt. I also would say that I can only talk about my own experience. So I was very specific, tried not to be generic. So I had a particular type of cancer which was very rare, and my experience is not comparable with somebody else's experience because I didn't have chemotherapy. I didn't rush into having an operation. I had time, and that is totally opposite to some of the other cancers where speed is of the essence, and chemotherapy and radiotherapy, I didn't have either of those, is really important. What it allowed me to do, I realized that I was going to have a massive operation that took about 20 centimeters out of my duodenum. I have the largest scar on the beach every time I'm on the beach. Was that I needed to get fit, and the way that I did that was I started, my passion when I was much younger was to walk. So I started walking in the Cheviots every week, and I would end up walking 15 miles. I'd start with a mile, and at the end of it, after about 9 months, I was walking 15 miles, 19 miles, and got super fit. So all of that, I suppose it makes you look at your body and appreciate it in a slightly different way, and also understand. I'd never been to the gym before. I never really paid much attention to exercise. I never really paid much attention to diet. I never really paid much attention to my stress levels. I never really paid much attention to my drinking levels. I never really paid much attention to the amount of sugar that I was having, when I was eating, how I was sleeping. All of those things became, well, if we change this, how might that impact the overall outcome? So that, I think, was a big shift. And then post-operation, you've been so beautifully treated by strangers in quite a sort of difficult working environment where you've got lots of very, very, very ill people, that you kind of owe them something not to waste their time, because they've invested a huge amount of time in you. So try and come out of it with a more positive attitude, I think, was one of the key things. Yeah, it was a profound moment.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Mark. I really appreciate it. I had a different but similar period in my life where I developed pneumonia, and I was quite ill anyway. I had proper flu, off the back of Christmas, and it was in the January when about 7 years ago now, and I developed pneumonia on top of the flu, and I ended up with collapsed lung, was rushed into the respiratory ward at Cramlington. The following overnight, they did my obs, and I was rushed into the intensive care. I had 4 days in intensive care. I found out afterwards, my wife had the discussion with the doctors in intensive care around, we need to discuss what may happen here. So it was a bit touch and go for a little bit. Amazing care from the NHS, again, in my experience too. But I suppose point being that it's certainly changed my perspective on life. And in many ways, actually, in terms of how you think and value and prioritise. And also that don't sweat so much like the little things, in my personal experience anyway. And I think, trying to take a positive for myself. Again, I've been through a similar scenario around, I was quite unhealthy on reflection back then compared to how I am now. And it certainly changed my lifestyle, my habits and exercise regime and so forth since then. But also as a young dad at the time, like I've got 3 children now. My eldest, who's 9, was only just over a year old at the time. So that's been a major impact around just prioritising and, which, as a business owner or director of a few businesses, main one being a marketing agency, it is a good leveller because, you know yourself that you could spend any amount of time working in your business or on your business, and but you need to remember what's most important.
Well, it was interesting. When I came out of it, it took 9 months to really, truly recover the levels of energy. And so 2018, the whole of 2018, I was pretty much just recovering. At the end of that, and I said, I can't work at this level of intensity anymore. And I said, oh, come on, we're just starting. Because I was kind of, had this new lease of life. And 2018, 2019, we were, as a business, absolutely flying and doing great stuff, mainly in the wedding market. And 2020, the great COVID pandemic, absolutely bang, stop, nothing happening. And I had the unenviable task. So we had a full order book of clients. I had the unenviable task of just sitting in the office waiting for the phone to ring, because it would be the person whose wedding was coming up on the Saturday, and they're going, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
I did that for 3 months. And at the end of it, I was just like, I can't keep doing this, because it was brutal. It was brutal because really we knew that it was unrealistic to think that, we were going, okay, well, we'll try and do something in the autumn. That was as far ahead as we could think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was difficult. That was difficult too.
So despite that, you've developed a really successful wedding business here. And as you reference, your order book is exceptional, and it's a particularly distinctive venue, not more so than by its location in central Northumberland. So we talked earlier a little bit prior to recording, but my wife and I, we got married in 2012 in a place called Belford, possibly with a similar mindset to many of your guests, where we chose to be married in a location that was rural, where we hosted our guests over an Easter bank holiday weekend for 4 days, and on the thought process that we had friends who we invited from like the Northwest and London and Southeast, and a small number internationally as well. So it was great to be able to host them in the middle of the countryside that we love and over a longer period than just a day. And that strikes me, without oversimplifying it, but that's quite a draw here as well.
Yeah, so we have a phrase which is unhurried is unmatched. And that is exactly right. We take our time. We want people who appreciate the time that is invested in developing an amazing day. But it's more than that. It's a day that brings two families together and starts you on a long journey. So that's what we try and do. But I think that the wedding market is changing rapidly at the moment. When I talk to my kids, I've got kids 21, 23, kind of, they're absolutely not interested in spending money on getting married. I know that they're young, but it isn't something that's in their mindset. That's not the way that they're going to live their life. I think everybody's home budgets are getting squeezed, and we've identified that numbers are smaller. So we've completely remodeled what we're trying to do here into fewer, smaller, longer weddings, and we'll see whether we've got that right. But it fits in really well with the other aspects of the business, which are our wellness. I mean, we're sitting in the yoga studio at the moment that we created a couple of years ago, which has been hosting yoga, sound baths, weekend retreats, and we've also had business retreats come here. So that, I think, is going to be a emphasis alongside the weddings that we do. And we're really looking forward to that.
Fantastic. You talk, and I think this is symptomatic of the dynamic you've shared around, you talk very much around the business element there, which is very understandable and absolutely the right way to, in my view, to approach it. But there's also a strong element of the creativity aspect again, and in particular, the longer stays, the location of the Brinkburn where we are, it facilitates that sort of disconnection to then reconnect.
Yeah.
Which plays through in the weddings, people staying longer, but also from a business and a wellness perspective.
Yeah. So we're 35 minutes from the centre of Newcastle, but actually you could be you're in the middle of nowhere. There's a great thing about rural infrastructure. We have just fantastic fibre connection, not because BT or Openreach put in fantastic fibre connection, but when you have a place like this that has 150 people in the parish, it's very easy to get them all together and come together as a community and say, okay, BT do not want to connect us to the internet, but they are interested if we do it and raise money ourselves to do. So that's how this sort of stuff works out here in the countryside. People connect together to make big projects like that happen. Fantastic. And that's great. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what I would like businesses to do is to come out to the countryside, disconnect from what they know, and see a slightly different way the world works.
Fantastic. And it must have been, whether you realise it or not, observationally, quite a brave move to almost pivot. Well, not quite pivot's the right word, but...
Pivot is exactly the right word. Pivot is the right word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, pivot away from the weddings into the more sort of build the business wellness world. And,
yeah.
And it's not just, the steps on that journey you've explained to me are, the creation of this amazing space, which was quite a task, an undertaking in itself from a refurbishment, inviting in yoga instructor and sound bath instructors and so forth, and building an initial community here, and then inviting people in to experience that as well.
Yes.
So it's been quite a step journey in that respect as well.
Yes.
So it's not like an instant pivot. There has been steps along the way, but at the same time, a very brave move, and good on you for.
Yes.
On.
Yeah. Yes. But I feel it's got longevity, and I think that personal wellness is well understood, and if you go back just from jogging to gym to Pilates to yoga, even now you can go and find a Pilates studio in the town that you're in. You can find a yoga studio in the town that you're in. That is well understood. I think the next stage is for businesses to understand that organising themselves to support their teams is not just about professional development, but retention is also about the whole holistic, personal-centric view of the people who work for you, your employees. And that is slowly beginning to become more mainstream, and that's the bit that I'm really excited about.
Fantastic. I mean, it completely aligns with our ethos at Bonded around the importance of human connection, but bringing that to life, it's certainly not, in our view, which is so prevalent in the business world, a tick box exercise of, let's have a budget and pay for professional development courses, which, fulfill a need, but in the sense of truly bringing together and connecting the team effectively for the purpose of engagement, employee engagement, as well as retention. If you can get to that deeper level and bring well-being and that type of positivity into the business world, it's only going to have lasting benefits, I suggest.
We all feel it.
Yes.
There are times in our lives where we have skipped to work, where we have just gone, oh my God, this is so exciting. I want to go to work. And it's trying to get that mindset right. How does that work? So some of it is about the work that you do. Some of it is about the team that you're with. Some of it is about connecting with the wider organisation.
Yes.
And some of it is about how you're connecting with your clients. So all of those things, if people can come here and we can support them developing those things, then those connections, those ideas, those skills to be able to improve that, then that'll be a good day's work from my point of view.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I love that ethos. And we usually end the podcast session on, a thought around, for the audience, what does sort of the future of connection within business look like? I take from our discussions that, the well-being aspect and people reconnecting with themselves and others in the same environment, such as this, is an aspect that should be considered. People should be open-minded towards, and it's certainly an ethos that I believe in. What have you got any last thoughts for the audience along those lines?
So I think the most difficult job in a business is for the people who lead it. And I think people who lead businesses well don't spend 100% of their time in their head. They spend a proportion of it in their heart. However, I don't think that's encouraged by your shareholders. I don't think that's something that your shareholders or investors want to see, and I think that just probably needs to change. You need to, as a leader, feel what you're doing as well as know it in your head.
Fantastic. What a great note to leave on. Well, thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you.
It's been a great episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.